All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Steve Malzberg Show. The one and only Patrick J. Buchanan will join us in just a moment. But there's news that seems like all day news is happening. First of all, we had an evacuation during a TSA hearing in the Senate. They evacuated the Senate hearing room and the Senate building for the most part. A suspicious package. Then, during the White House press briefing, Josh Earnest announced that they had to evacuate that room. In each case, the bomb-sniffing dogs were brought in. The North Lawn of the White House was evacuated. Yet they tell us the president was not removed from the White House. So I don't get that, and I don't really think that that's the case. They probably brought him to some secure place that they don't want to talk about. Also, Dennis Hastert came to court, pleaded not guilty to the charges against him. We'll talk about that more with Kendall Coffey in the next hour. Before we go to Patrick J. Buchanan right now, I want us to watch this.
Bill O'Reilly says if you're a Christian or a white man in the USA, it's open season on you. Yes, that explains all those recent videos of police shooting unarmed white clergymen. This idea that everybody on the left is plotting against Christianity and wants to wipe out religion is offensive to me, because I'm the only media figure with a show week in and week out that says that. And I'll be damned if the credit's going to go to the entire left when I'm doing all the heavy lifting.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's what you'd expect from Bill Maher. Joining us now is Patrick J. Buchanan, former presidential candidate, of course, former Reagan Staffer, author of The Greatest Comeback. And Pat, you're working on another book about the Nixon White House years, correct?
Oh yeah, we get into all what Nixon did with regard to Vietnam and forced busing and ending the draft and the summits, and also into Watergate. I've been working on it a while. I've got about a good number of words in the word processor, my friend.
Well, that's great. We can't wait to see it, and certainly we'll talk about it when it comes out. Okay, let's talk about, you wrote a great piece about cultural cleansing of Christian males. You talk about a statue at the University of St. Louis that's being removed because after all these years it's deemed to be not culturally sensitive or whatever. This doesn't end, does it? I mean, it just gets worse and worse, and the left keeps denying it more and more as they continue to do it.
Well, Steve, what I've always believed is we are really in a cultural war in America. It's something of a religious war, where secularism has very largely succeeded in driving Christianity, which is the formative religion of the entire West, driving that out of the public square and out of the public schools. And the example I use is Junipero Serra, who was a missionary Franciscan who came up from Mexico when California was Alta California, still part of Mexico, and created these missions, San Diego and San Francisco and San Luis Obispo. And none of them turned into great cities in California, and he's a figure who is represented with a statue in Statuary Hall in Capitol Hill, and they're trying to get that removed.
Yeah, and that's outrageous. It really is. But, you know, this is a continuation, Pat, of what you've been talking about for years, and I've been talking about for years. And, you know, I mean, you know, something that goes along with it, I mean, I think this whole Bruce Jenner thing, and the celebrating of Bruce Jenner on the cover of Vanity Fair, ESPN picking him to get a Courage Award over a girl who died of cancer at 19 and played basketball until the end. This is all part of the same thing.
Well, that's right. Every religion or every cult and every faith, Islam is among them, Catholicism, Christianity, Judaism, they create their moral codes, and they create their moral heroes and their saints and sinners and all the rest of it. And the Bruce Jenner episode tells you what the modern secularism regards as really heroic and moral. And we see it in the advance of same-sex marriage. I mean, the belief that this is heroic and progressive and good, and those who have outlawed it in the past are reactionary, and their beliefs need to be driven out of public life and certainly not inculcated into children.
Yeah, and you know, but it progresses to the point also where, in the case of the transgender, there are a lot of places, Pat, if you had a granddaughter, maybe you do, she could go to the bathroom, and a guy who says, I feel like a woman, a 45-year-old male, could be in that bathroom with her.
Well, I think there's some things you're going to, some things, because we're a free society, that you really, and you want to maintain it democratic and free, and we have tremendous differences. and people, quote, do their own things. But when you've got the situation you've described, I think people have to stand up and say no. At some point, you have to, when people are trying to impose their values on you, and here I do agree with some of the civil rights movement when they said, look, we're not going to get up and go to the back of the bus. I'm sick of it. I'm going to sit in the front of the bus. And I think Christians need a little bit of that defiance.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more, whether it's this issue and whether it's the slaughter of Christians throughout the Middle East and all over the world. And I just agree, I couldn't agree with you more, and it's something we talk about on this show all the time. And
well, it's like we're undergoing, Steve, but in a more peaceful way, obviously, something that the French Revolution did. Initially they came and they had the great massacre. The first massacre was of the priests there, and then, of course, they drove the religion to take the statues down, empty the churches out. And to a degree, it succeeded. Take a look at all the, as I mentioned, all the churches and cathedrals, great cathedrals of Europe, are now museums, and some of them are restaurants and bars.
Yep, absolutely true. All right, let me ask you a question. When the President of the United States says, as he did yesterday overseas, when asked a question about what happens if the Obamacare mandate is overturned by the court, he had no answer for what would happen to the states, but he did go on to say how this is an easy decision and the court never should have taken it in the first place. You've worked for presidents. I mean, how over the top, or how would you describe that kind of statement?
Well, I think he's got his fingers crossed, is how I would describe the statement. The point is, the states have a perfect right to speak up and say the specific language of the legislation says, you're not reimbursed for this and you are for that. And it amounts to tremendous amounts of money are involved, and we would like the court to decide, because even the president himself, when he said the Congress could change it back to what is right by passing a single sentence.
Right.
He knows it.
Right. All right, but let me ask you, Pat, when he lambasted the Supreme Court at a State of the Union after the Citizens United case, that got a lot of criticism because that was unpresidential, many people said. This was not in that forum, but this was overseas, which I don't even think matters that much. But this is in advance of a decision, which has probably been made, I'll grant you that, but hasn't been announced. Is it appropriate for a president to infringe upon the other branch of government that way?
Well, in my view, I don't think the court's going to pay any attention to what the president says. They know what he believes. And I am one, I will say, who believes that we have allowed the Supreme Court, and the subject we just mentioned with its purging of Christianity from public schools, and the Bible's gone, and all the prayers are gone, and the Easter and Christmas are gone, and all the rest of it. I believe the Supreme Court in the last 60 years, ever since Earl Warren took the throne up there, really has been part and parcel of the purging of Christian America. So I have no problem with presidents criticizing the court. In my new book, I'm suggesting that Richard Nixon, I thought, should have really stood up and told the Supreme Court, look, you're ordering us busing people all over cities and counties on racial grounds, and I'm not going to do it.
All right, one more for you. The president also admitted that there's still no strategy to combat ISIS. Pat, I mean, this is beyond incompetence. It's been 2 years. He said the same thing several months ago, that there's no strategy yet. He's waiting for recommendations. He said it again yesterday. Does he want to beat ISIS?
Well, I think what the president's got is he has willed the ends. ISIS is going to be defeated. Assad's going to come down. Assad must go, and all the rest. But he does not will the means. And given the means that are at hand, you cannot defeat ISIS, drive them out of Iraq, out of Mosul, out of Ramadi, and back into Syria, and defeat them in Raqqa with the forces and troops and all he's got on hand.
Right.
So what you've got here is sort of a president who looks very weak because he makes these declarations that he doesn't have the power or the will to carry out.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem with the President of the United States. He probably shouldn't be running around saying Assad must go if he's not going to make him leave.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Pat, always great to talk to you. It's really a pleasure, and keep up the good work on the book. We'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, you keep up the good work. Take it easy,
Thank
Steve.
you. All right, Patrick J. Buchanan. We're coming back with Michael Myers of the New York Civil Rights Coalition. Don't go away.